Okay, so it says that we are live.
Wonderful. How are you, Miss Cunningham?
I am well. I want to welcome you,
Thank you.
and I am going to start off with a statement. I
Okay.
know that there was an email sent today just asking for some transparency, and I'll read the last bullet of the email. It says ARMS staff are concerned about a history of hiring practices that appear to include conflicts of interest. We believe that the responsibility of candidates and anyone involved in hiring them to declare any social or commercial connections they may have with one another, and that those at HR or in the search committee with such connections should recuse themselves from any involvement in the hiring process. It says, we believe that the superintendent and school committee should make a good faith effort to discover conflicts of interest that may hinder a fair and equitable search. And I know that there are many who have done their research, and so they've come back with faulty information. And with that being said, I'm just going to make my declaration. And Gabrielle, after I make mine, you can make yours, okay?
Okay.
So
Great.
I have never met you. I don't know you from anything or anywhere ever prior to last week when you came to interview with our district.
Right.
So that is me making the statement of disclosure that you and I, although we share the same skin color, we have never met and have no outside affiliation. Gabrielle, can
Right.
you just share whether you know me or not from any previous
Yes.
affiliations?
Right. I affirm that I have not met Miss Cunningham prior to last week's initial interview. She is good company to know. So I'm excited to be here with the ARMS community and hopefully get to know everyone much better. But
Okay, great.
previously, no connection.
All right, thank you. And people are going to believe what they want to believe either way, right?
Right. That's fine.
So let me start off by saying good evening and welcome to the ARMS Principal Forum. So
Thank you.
you had a chance to meet me and the other individuals who interviewed you during last week's forum interview session. And um, basically, I hope you got a good feel for our district. We know that you, Gabrielle, are interviewing us as well as while we're interviewing you.
Mhm.
So tonight we're going to ask you a series of questions. I had asked the community, families, and every staff members to send me questions that they would like to hear you respond to. I received
Great.
quite a few with some themes that are going to that I have merged together because a lot of people had the similar thoughts as to what they wanted you to respond to. Prior to me asking the full blown questions, the people who are watching, and it says at this moment we have about 20 people. The people who
Okay.
are watching would like to know more about you because they, like the interview committee, have never seen your resume. So
Right.
please tell us more about you and your background.
Wonderful. Thank you so much again for the opportunity to be here with the ARMS community. And as a leader and as a person, I've been shifting twofold. First of all, I'm an inclusive, affirming, and collaborative leader. And I anchor my leadership on three things for both students, staff, colleagues, peers, parents: agency, voice, and self determination to make decisions for the future. And that tip comes down to just my upbringing. When I was younger, I had to face some challenging decisions at a young age. In high school, I remember the company that my mom worked for was going to be sending jobs overseas. And so she had a tough choice to make. And I remember her calling me into the kitchen and saying, Gabrielle, I know you want to go to college, but here's the predicament that I'm in with my job. I can keep my job for lower wages, or I can sell it, and we might not have enough money to put you all the way through school. And I remember at this young age being like, you know, who gets to make these types of decisions? We've done everything right. I've gone to school, middle and high school. I have helped take care of my younger brother while we were growing up. I did everything right. My mom did everything right as a single parent. But now I'm at the finish line, which really should prepare me to propel me to my future. And I'm stuck with this tough choice. It was from that moment on that I decided I want to be an advocate. I want to go into education, and I want to make sure that students that I'm working with, families that I'm working with, everyone in the greater community knows that I am a leader focused on agency, voice, and self determination. In the classroom, I have anchored student agency at the center, both bringing the community into the classroom as well as exposing students to the greater community, inviting parents in as partners to be a front and center part, an integral part of the classroom and decision making for their students. Oftentimes, I see that we have parents kind of on the back burner, on the outline until something happens, and then we want to build the relationship. And we know that doesn't work for our students, and it doesn't work for our families, and it doesn't work for the community. Parents also should have a voice when it comes to decisions happening for their students and with their students. I also see myself as super inclusive, affirming, and collaborative. We're living in times now, and we always have been, where oftentimes we want to isolate one part of ourselves or one part of a minority group, or kind of tier our approach to how we support the needs of everyone, when really everybody's fighting for the same thing. And if we come together and operate as a fist rather than isolated fingers, we can accomplish a lot in our community for our students, especially at the middle school, 7th and 8th grade levels, where they're navigating so many different things with their identities. Let's celebrate that. Let's leverage that. Let's encourage our students to take on leadership and be their authentic selves in and out of the school building. I'm also a leader that centers around joy. Who wants to come to a school that doesn't have joy? Let's have some fun while we're learning. We know we have a lot of hard work to do. We know we are in MCAS testing season, Ms. Cunningham. I know you're feeling it too. But let's have some fun. Let's have some celebrations. Let's celebrate some small and large milestones together for students and for staff, and know that we're in this for the long run together. So that's me. I'm all about agency, voice, self-determination, and inclusivity. And self-care. Now, I can't leave out the self-care. I thought I was done, but I'm also definitely centering on self-care. We have to take care of ourselves if we want to be good for other people.
Right. Well, thank you very much for that one. Um, First question says, this is a school seeking stable and capable leadership, and we have several collaborative aspirations and models. Can you tell us, how will you evaluate, create, and assess a strong working community among the faculty and staff?
Yeah, so I think about what are the on ramps or pipelines that we can support with establishing instructional practices, instructional coaching, and developmental supports for teachers in the summertime. And think critically and think intentionally about how we use that summer planning time to launch teachers into the school year, while building trust, while building content knowledge, and while collaborating with each other to ensure that we're supporting students based on their individual needs. So initially, I'll use that summer planning time, use some PD time throughout the school year, but also leveraging our teachers, who are also integral stakeholders within the school community, and leveraging their expertise around how do we plan, how do we support, how do we scaffold differentiation for all students, not just our, majority students, definitely paying close attention to our exceptional learning students and our English learners, which we know we have that population in 7th and 8th grade at ARMS, and just being an inclusive, collaborative leader when it comes to how we are supporting students in their learning overall. And with that comes also making sure that we have those benchmark chunks for how we're monitoring progress over the course of the year. So at the beginning of the year, whether you're a veteran teacher or a novice teacher, what is the first chunk, the first month of school look like for you? How are we celebrating and measuring your success? If there are stumbling blocks, how do we work together to help you overcome those stumbling blocks? Same thing going on throughout the school year, creating these benchmarks, these progress markers for ourselves, and supporting each other collaboratively, celebrating success. And then also, if we're not meeting the mark, coming together as a team, because we're working on creating safe spaces to have these conversations and coach through them.
You touched on a couple of questions that I have here. So this was question number 7, but I'm going to ask it now since you started talking about benchmarks and such, right? So it says, beyond MCAS and other standardized measures, what do you consider the most useful form of data about middle school teachers and students and their overall well-being? What kinds of things do you learn from non-testing data, and how have you used this?
Ooh, that's a really, really great question, Ms. Cunningham. Thank you for taking me there. One of the things that I found to be a priority, especially coming out of the pandemic, especially for middle and early high school students, is the emphasis on creating restorative and holistic supports for students. And even when you think about restorative practices, it's more than just having group circles where we talk about what's going on or we talk about feelings. It's building this community of safeness, a culture where if there is harm done, if someone's offended, if something happens, maybe that goes beyond offense, we have a safe space in our classroom, but also in our greater school community where we can talk about this. If we have a situation that spirals outside of that safe space, where myself as the school leader, teacher leaders, parents need to be brought in, we still want to think about how do we restore and repair the relationship in order to move on. But we're not just having these conversations. We should track the data, right? Because data tells us everything. One of the things I've been able to do in the past is pinpoint when and where some of this harm can happen, or when and where pockets of joy happen throughout the school year. That can be as simple as talking to the team about here's a Google form that we're using, so that we can look at when and where, of course, this is happening again. What are the hot spots? So that then I can work with the student, with the family, and then also with the teachers around how we can overcome this obstacle moving forward. The foundation to students being successful is for them to feel safe and welcome in their classroom, safe and welcome in their school, regardless of their gender identity, regardless of orientation, race, ability. We want our students to feel safe because we know that when students feel safe, they achieve at the highest level on MCAS and beyond.
Oh, okay, well, thank you for that. The question as a slight follow-up would be, what steps have you taken in previous positions to ensure the safety of all students, regardless of their race, national origin, religion, disability, age, sexual orientation, or gender identity? And then please provide specific examples of how you have created inclusive and safe spaces in the past. Because you talked about students and feeling safe and
Mhm.
belonging, right, in the school.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. So, a couple of steps that I would take and a couple of things that I've done in the past is to make sure that we have the right folks supporting students outside of the classroom as well as inside of the classroom. But let's start with what happens inside of the classroom. One of my favorite analogies that I use is making a deposit. And we all have bank accounts, right? And we all know what happens when you try to make a withdrawal from your bank account and you don't have no money in the bank, right? What happens? You overdraft. The same thing happens with students when they might be having a bad day. Maybe the adult in front of them is having a bad day, and we try to withdraw or provide a correction or a check, if you will. But we haven't done the work of depositing into that student, giving them positive affirmations, asking them if they've had a great day, making community contact with the families early on in the school year. But now we're trying to call because we need support because something happened. The instructional support with that would be ensuring that teachers are building the relationships with students on the front end of the school year so that, again, when harm is done, we can move forward as a team. That would be the first step. Then what happens outside of the classroom? Who are the student support people? It could be a teacher leader, it can be our counselors, which I know have been doing incredible work in the arms community. Who are the folks that support with that holistic need of students? Who are the ones that have check-ins with them throughout the day? Who are the ones that are asking them what happened? And we know that our middle schoolers can have very bold and frank conversations with us around what happened. And how are we also, again, because I'm a very data-oriented person, how are we, again, tracking the data to ensure that this doesn't become a perpetual cycle of the same students or same, situations? How can we create those supports that students need so that they can move forward and feel safe? Also, on that same notion, thinking about what are some spaces we can have for students? What are their interests? Can we create a survey at the beginning of the year because our students are also key stakeholders in their education to ask, what do you want to do? What do you want to see? What do you want to lead? One of the things I was able to do in the past was create affinity spaces based off of just that restorative needs for students. I had students that were grappling with some newfound identity struggles that they wanted to navigate with. So, one of the things that I was really excited and proud to launch was an LGBTQIA book club. And we had a series of coming of age books that I had my restorative practice team leaders facilitate with students. And in that book club, they were able to ask questions, be their true and authentic selves, and we celebrated them each and every day, regardless of what was going on in the background. Another piece of that was just establishing some mentorships. Students that were able to take on a little bit more leadership, again, regardless of gender identity, age, ability, everybody was welcome in these clubs because we are fully inclusive. Um, Including them in the mentorship program, and then kind of checking in with them, because students working with students helps to move them, grow them, move them forward. And our mentors, student mentors, became leaders for the rest of the population. And then also thinking about, what does student leadership look like at the middle school level? Again, our kids have a lot of bold ideas, a lot of bold conversations that they want to have. Let's use that for the good. Let's let them feel empowered. Let's let them use their voice. Let's create a student council. Let's create some art clubs. Let's figure out what is their niche and really lean into what their niche is so that they feel empowered and want to be in school with us each and every day, regardless of what's going on. And who are the adults that are in front of them and around them that support with that?
You touched on inclusion, and there is a question here that talks about the person wrote, I'd like to ask each candidate how they would handle universal inclusion and what their support for students with disability would look like. What kind of commitment do you have to full inclusion, and how do you intend to expand and realize some of the programs that are here? I'm not sure if you did your own research to see what programs were here, but they just wanted to know how would you expand it and increase access for all students and end disparities to access. So that's a lot combined in that statement or that question. But
Yeah.
basically, how would you handle universal inclusion, and what kind of supports would you offer for students with disabilities?
Yes. So the programs that are offered for our students with disabilities within the arms community are some of the best in the country, right? And a part of that is also the inclusive model, where all students, again, regardless of ability or language acquisition, are able to get grade or above grade level education in seventh and eighth grade. One of the things that it takes to build out a program like that and to enhance the strong program and culture that you already have in ARMS, and is with collaboration of our intensive needs administrator, is to ensure that teachers have the coaching and development that they need to support with differentiation when needed, scaffolding, creating some flexible learning groups. How do we break off to look at the data to see which students might need to be pulled to a small group to get that individualized supports, while other students are able to continue moving and doing the work on their own. Just being intentional around how we are using our curricula, also around how we're using the data to create some groups, and making sure that literally all of our students are performing at or above grade level, but it might not all be at the same pace. And I know, again, we have our strong intensive needs administrator. We have a strong special education department that I will be working alongside with, if offered this position, to be a part of the ARMS community, to move that work ahead and ensure that all of our students are performing at the highest levels, because that's what they deserve. Thank you for that question.
So here's one that I'm going to read. It says the Amherst Regional Middle School teachers tend to be vocal activists for their school and their students. It says we want a principal who can work with us on the multitudes of issues that come up every year. Please describe how you would work with us collaboratively to reach our goals.
Yes. So keyword collaboratively. And I love working alongside vocal activists and leaders in school buildings. I feel like that's how we impact change and make sure that there's a system of accountability all across the board, and there's not a top-down approach. I think about our teachers as being like some of the strongest stakeholders that we have. So my role and my goal would be to really listen in on their areas of expertise and figure out how we can work together to really lean into their areas of expertise to make beautiful things happen for students, but also make sure that teachers are feeling supported in the areas where they need development, coaching, and evaluation in as well throughout the course of the school year. So it's acknowledging that everybody is bringing in their strengths to the arms community, leveraging those strengths, but then also identifying I am a lifelong learner, Ms. Cunningham. I have not mastered anything yet. Okay, I have a master's degree, but I have not arrived. Okay, so just like I have not arrived, we all as educators should be lifelong learners and continue to lean into our practice, lean into development and coaching, just like I would be seeking feedback from my colleagues and from you, and from the teacher team as well. Because that's how we learn and grow. That's how we get better for students. That's how we become more and more effective.
So then what would your plan be on how to create it says a harmonious work environment and build a community where all the teachers can thrive and feel heard and respected?
Yes. So creating a harmonious work environment. I look at that again, and I'm someone that's very relational. I like to get to know people, hear their stories. And I'm also someone that believes I have to be out of the office and into the classroom. And that takes early on in the school year, right? Thinking about the summer planning time, getting to know the teachers, getting to know the needs, getting to know what's going on, and starting to build relationships with them. And then learning what their strengths and areas of focus are gradually before we get into the school year. I mentioned a little bit ago the importance of deposits and depositing into students before we withdraw. It's the same thing with teachers. Folks want to feel heard. They want to know that their opinions and voices matter. And I'm someone that truly believes that. Let's have a conversation. Let's have an open dialogue because, again, I am not a top-down leader. I'm very collaborative. I want to listen and learn and know more. And together, we build joyful learning spaces. Together, we will build a harmonious school culture together, but it takes strong communication on the early point of the school year that continues throughout the school year.
I'm going to pause for a second. We are halfway through the questions.
Okay.
And so this would be your opportunity if you wanted to get a sip of your water or just add on to anything, but we're halfway through, and so I'm going to pause.
Yep. Great. Wonderful. And I definitely have water ready and available. I think learning about the culture of the arms community, and again, I know that you have a scholar that is a part of the arms community, and also all the things that I know to be true about the educators is what makes the school so special. And so the role of, whomever you all choose to become a part of the community as the principal is not to take over by any means. It's to be a thought partner, to help with the utilization of data, to help ensure that everyone, staff, students, families feel included and engaged as a part of the community, and to really listen and help, build something that is sustainable, build something that lasts beyond an MCAS score, where people feel safe, where people feel seen, where people feel heard. Another big part that I do want to share is the importance of having parent voice at the forefront. I know I had, been thinking about how can we collect information or how can we bring parents to the table all throughout the school year. Again, I love a corny joke and I love the corny deposits analogy that I keep mentioning. I think, at the beginning of the school year, middle of the school year, end of the school year, is great to do a survey or something where we get information from parents and see, what are your thoughts about this, your scholar's school? What are some concerns that you have? Do you feel like your voice is heard? But I think we can up the frequency of that, like really building the relationships with parents, bringing them into the school, having more of a, an open door policy, if you will, when with the proper, protocol in place so that parents are at the forefront. Again, they should be at the table when it comes to making decisions for their students. It shouldn't happen on the back end, after the decisions are made. Now we're calling the parent in for a meeting. No, let's get that done on the front end. And that's another part of how we will create a joyful culture, not just for students and staff, but also for our families.
So I'll say that one of the questions here talks about communication. I'm going to read the question and then kind of change a little bit. The question
Okay.
as sent to me says communication is key for most families. How do you plan on keeping families informed on what is going on in the school? You touched on surveys and such,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yes.
I would say, how do you reach those who are not able to share information via survey?
Mm-hmm.
So give us more if you can expand on how else you would communicate outside of
Mm-hmm.
just the survey alone. One of your questions during the interview talked about how do you reach families who don't normally come in. So
Okay.
if you can touch on
Yes.
something like that as well.
Absolutely. So survey would be the high level initial and throughout the year touches, right? What are the touch points that we have? We can do a survey at least 3 times a year, but that's not building the relationship, right? That's just data that we get to hear the voices and the needs and the ideas and the opinions of parents so that we can include them as a part of building the community and building the culture. I think that in addition to the survey, we should figure out who are our parental stakeholders that can help us build up some different needs and communities and group parent-centered groups, focus groups, if you will, groups where parents can come in and talk about what's happening with the ELA department or come in and talk about this restorative practice system, right? That we say that we have, that we need to, enhance and build better over the course of the school year. So the initial survey data will be great for launching those types of initiatives, but then thinking about who are the parents that have the capacity to be some of our key leaders. And then it's the same thing as networking, right? Parents reach other parents for us. Maybe they know the parents that we can't get in touch with. Maybe they speak the language of the parents that we can't get in touch with through the survey or through phone calls, so on and so forth. Also, I will say a part of me is old school because I don't mind, going on into the beautiful arms community and meeting people face to face. And there's nothing like going to a good flea market or going to the grocery store and meeting folks, and putting face to names, because I believe truly in the importance of human connection and getting to know people. So I believe that where there's a will, there's a way when it comes to getting in front of all of our parents and just having, I mentioned joyful spaces, joyful assemblies, joyful culture, but also bringing parents in to help us co-plan and co-create these joyful spaces and cultures on the front end, and not waiting all the way until the end of the school year or again when something happens to invite them to the table. Let's get them there to build it with us. And we can do that if we're intentional about our time.
So you talk about the joyful spaces and building and doing all this great thing. What One of the questions that someone asked is, what prompted you to apply for this position, and how can you reassure the families and staff that you will stay the course and not quit after 1 year?
Okay, so one of the things that had encouraged me and inspired me really to apply for the arms position is just knowing the beautiful cultures and spaces and how truly diverse the arms community is. And then also knowing just the importance of having an impact with seventh and eighth grade students, because they're at a pivotal moment in their lives. They need strong supports and leadership that will hold them to high expectations, but also create a sense of safety, community, and belonging all throughout the school year. And that's something that I've been able to do in the past as a chameleon, right? Sometimes we have to be chameleon leaders and shift and change over the course of the year based on the needs of our students and staff and our families, but also just being consistent. And that is one thing that is true about myself, is that I'm extremely consistent. And if we want our students to feel that sense of belonging, we have to know, that you are bringing somebody that is not going to leave after a year, that is going to stay the course, and that will be there for the long run in order to create this, sense of just safety and, collaboration in a place where students feel like they truly belong. And that's someone that I am, right? Again, I've had to be a chameleon all throughout my career just because I work in education, right? So sometimes you do have to shape and shift. But I do believe in order to have a sustainable and healthy school community, you have to have someone that's going to be there for the long haul. Someone that truly believes in our students and that they all can achieve. Again, all students can achieve at the highest levels when they feel safe, seen, and heard, and when they're also pushed and challenged academically.
So you bring out the students. So let me ask you two of the student questions. It says, how will you help students to feel engaged and challenged in their academic classes? And then the other one says, well, answer that one first, and then I'll go back to the next one.
Okay, no problem. So, how will I help students to feel engaged and challenged? I think it's twofold. The first part will be supporting teachers, right? So, we talked a little bit ago about listening to teachers, learning about their area of expertise, but also learning about what areas there are for growth and establishing that initial coaching cycle. That is a non negotiable, right? Because we're all lifelong learners and lifelong leaders in our school. So, establishing that to ensure that teachers feel like they have the support they need to provide the instruction that, again, is equitable. And when I say equitable, meaning fully inclusive, right? Also at or above grade level, that pushes our students to think, challenge, and create. In seventh and eighth graders, if they can do nothing else, they can definitely think, challenge, and create. So, how can we leverage that and push them at the grade level and channel that into what they're producing academically? So that's the instructional piece. Coaching systems, high level academic curriculum, and also ensuring that students are doing the heavy lifting of the work, right? And this is something that myself and the teacher leaders, instructional leaders will work with teachers on. But then there's also that sense of belonging, creating a culture where student feels like they can show up in a classroom and thrive and perform, and where they are challenged. And a lot of that comes in, different instructional moves and instructional supports that teachers will be supported with me on, but also just having students feel like they are seen and heard will be a part of the coaching piece, and also ensuring that teachers feel comfortable with ensuring that students are seen and heard, and that we're creating spaces where everybody feels included, like they have a voice. Again, that whole agency, voice, and self-determination piece is something that we want to fully implement collaboratively as a team.
So the second piece talks about how do you plan on engaging students? It says the rising seventh graders for this upcoming school year. So by the time you start, let's say if you are the chosen person, by the time you start, you would be coming and starting July 1st. Then
Mm-hmm.
you have students who are seventh grader, because this is a 2-year school, right? So you have students who are seventh graders getting ready to rise into the eighth grade. How do you plan to engage those students in our school?
Yes, they're the big dogs on campus, right? Rising seventh graders, they're going to be the big dog on campus. So really helping them to see the power of their leadership, of being the eighth graders in the upcoming school year, and leaning into that, right? Helping them see themselves as key stakeholders, helping them, navigate the complexities of, being in eighth grade can kind of be a tough year as well, because you're going to be in high school. And then what do you do when you're in high school? You're no longer going to have all this like protection with people supporting you and telling you what to do. No, you kind of have to go and figure it out a little bit on your own. But setting them up for success early on in the school year by creating this, like, we are eighth grade, you are the leaders of the building, and now we need you to show seventh graders how it's done. Show seventh graders how you can achieve at high levels. Show seventh graders how we talk to each other in the hallways, how we create inclusive spaces. Have the eighth grade mentoring the seventh graders so that we have this like chain and pipeline. Maybe even some of the restorative practice work that we talk about doing. We can leverage some of our influencers, right? I use the word stakeholders, but all of our kids, they all love YouTube and they all want to be into YouTube influencers. So maybe we encourage them to influence seventh grade, or maybe even younger grades, right, to make right decisions, to do what they need to do in school when we have challenges. There's nothing like student to student learning and encouragement and influence over the course of the year. So I think that would be a good launch for it. Again, talking with the other stakeholders of the building, our teachers, families, and really just supporting eighth grade with understanding that they are the leaders of the school. We need you to be a positive influence, celebrating their benchmarks of success. That could be, at the beginning of the year, having a launch where we're celebrating them in some form for just being the leaders of the school, having something in the mid-year, maybe something positive that the students can lead and lift all throughout the year. And then, of course, as we get ready to send them off into our high school, having another big celebration, that they can plan and lead and execute, because we've kind of developed them over the course of the year to take on that type of leadership. And our kids will rise to the challenge. They will rise to the challenge.
Yeah, they typically do.
Yes.
um, so, along with that, if you want to add on, here's another question that's similar. It says, at present, we are at seventh through eighth grade school, right? Just 2 years.
Mhm.
How can you create a sense of belonging for students and families during such a short time?
I think it all comes from, again, the supports that they feel in a school. And I know we kind of have been talking all throughout this forum around ways that we build community and belonging for all of our stakeholders or influencers. What is it like for students? How do we get them to want to come to school on a consistent basis? How do we challenge them once they're in the classroom where they feel safe, seen, and heard on a consistent basis? How are we supporting our teachers with the differentiation and scaffolding that needs to happen to meet the needs of all students? And then how do we call in parents, both figuratively and literally, so that they feel included as a part of the community on the front end, not all the way at the end of the school year, not, in the instance that something happens with their student during the school year. So it's really kind of integrating these things, not operating in isolation with just one of our stakeholders, but including all of these pieces together, again, and acknowledging the strong culture and community that ARMS already has, in order to make sure that everybody feels a sense of belonging and community all throughout the course of the school year. And then some folks, some parents might have a little bit more time that they can invest into the school. Why not allow them to come into the school a little bit more if they have the time to support with students? Why not, have this kind of excitement and joyful leadership that we want to come from the students kind of spill over into the elementary school grades if we can, right? Just kind of creating this ongoing chain. Once we get this type of system established, that can spill beyond the school. But I do believe, and I have done, again, being a chameleon, work that, once you leverage leadership and once you start to reach out to our community and reach out to families and bring them in, they want to be there. But it takes the getting the systems in place to make that work happen together.
So here's another one. What is your perspective on the use of cell phones and or social media at school in the middle school years? Says, how have you worked with families, students, and communities to navigate these issues in the past?
Mm-hmm. So it's twofold. Technology in general is a beautiful tool, especially now. And I think it's also a tool that our students have mastered the use of technology, probably more than both you and I have. But I think there has to be a time and a place because of social media, because of a lot of different things that we have access to on our cell phones, it can be a distraction. Right. So going into the school year again and communicating with the teachers, with guidance counselors, and with families, I do think we'll have to establish a strong plan for how we are going to, if we're going to use cell phones during certain points, what are those points? Everybody has to know those points. And then there's no cell phone use at other points during the day. I think it's a safety a reason. I think it's also just helping students stay focused on learning, right? And if a teacher says, we need to use this for Kahoot or for whatever interactive game, we can advise permission for that during that point because, again, technology is a powerful tool. But outside of those parameters, we shouldn't be using cell phones throughout the school day. In regard to parent engagement and parent phone calls and, parents needing to get in contact with their students, definitely open, to having them contact me or contacting the main office, right? That's why we have the main office. If students need to get in touch with their families need to get in touch with students, that all goes through the main office as it would, a regular system. So technology can be beautiful for many reasons. We can definitely leverage it, but now we have to put some parameters around it, just because of safety and because of the distraction piece.
Okay, well, thank you for that. And then here's another one. It says the middle school competes with other private, charter, and public schools, as well as homeschooling as an option for the students. It says, how will you market the school for maximum retention of students from the elementary schools coming up to the middle school and to potentially attract the families who have left to help them to return back to middle school?
Yes. I think in working alongside you and learning alongside you and the teacher team, and our parents that have the capacity to step up a little bit more to be influencers. I think once we build out these systems, restorative practices, creating an inclusive, engaging, and affirming school culture for all students, regardless. Again, this is very important, regardless of gender identity, regardless of ability, regardless of race, regardless of any other minority pieces of themselves. Creating a truly inclusive culture, and then calling parents into it. Once we get that system established, right? Because it won't happen overnight. ARMS has been doing a lot of great things, but I know that it'll take some time to just get these systems established. And we already have a lot of great academic data. Once we get all those things together, now we can say we are ARMS, right? We are the middle school, and this is the place that you want to be. This is where a lot of excitement happens. This is where the learning happens. Trust me, you want to be on board with this team. And then it also takes getting out into the community, right? Letting the community see, not me as the principal, they don't care, right? Well, they care in this form, but they want to see what the students are doing. Again, using student voice, student influence, who are parental influencers that can go out and speak and do the marketing on our behalf. And then how are we getting with the times, like the students would say, and using social media to market our school in an effective and a caring way? But we have to have something positive and something engaging and affirming to market over time. And we'll get there, over time, and ensure that this is the place that people want to be. This is where students want to be. This is where the learning, thriving, and leadership happens.
Thank you for that. I like how you use that word influencer.
Yes.
That's the word that a lot of the young people are using
Yes.
today. Yes. Okay.
Absolutely.
But here's something where, it's not a positive thing, but just in conversation about bullying. It says, please provide examples of steps you took following reports of bullying in schools where you have worked.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So one of the things is just helping all stakeholders in our community understand that there is a zero tolerance for bullying, and it's a non-negotiable. In an instance of bullying, a lot of fact finding has to be done. So that's like figuring out what happened, getting anybody that was involved in the incident of bullying, gathering information on what happened, and then working with the guidance team, working with the teacher leaders or leadership team to figure out what are the steps that we have to take in order to make sure that this doesn't happen again. Previously, I've used a combination of like the district level protocol for bullying, as well as implementing that system of restorative practices, right? So I know ARMS has a whole process for dealing with bullying, but what happens when the goal is to get our students back into school, right? Or to make sure that they feel safe in school. So what does the system look like restoratively where our kids want to be in school, right? Or if there is harm, student to student, student to teacher, how are we having this conversation, hearing both sides out together as a team so that we feel safe and can move forward? We can co-create a plan to move forward in a restorative way. At first it might be a little bit uncomfortable, right? That's why I use the word on ramps, and providing, positioning people well, because we want to start the school year with this. We can't do it in December and then expect things to go well, right? We have to start the school year with these practices, and helping everybody understand that, the teacher leaders, teacher team, community, and students understand how this process works, and then having the folks that need to be involved in our restorative conversations involved in that, again, student to student, teacher to student, leader to student, or whatever the case may be. So it'll be a combination of the district policy. First of all, there is a zero tolerance policy for bullying, regardless of the event. Doing the fact finding that's needed, right? You can't jump the gun before you have all of your data and pieces in place. Communicating with all parties involved, and then creating that restorative system where this happened. How do we move forward together as a community and ensure that this does not happen again?
So your time with me is almost at the end, right?
Oh no.
The session was scheduled from 5 to 5:45. And so I believe the most important question right now, once again, is basically, why should we trust you with your candidacy
Mhm.
as the possible next potential leader of the middle school? Like, what can you bring to us that we
Mhm.
haven't heard other people say that they can bring?
Uh-huh.
And how would you be here to basically help us as a school?
Yes. Again, my whole focus has been to be collaborative, thoughtful, inclusive, but also centered around agency, voice, and self determination for our students, teachers, and our greater community, including our parents. As a leader, I will bring a lot of focus, a lot of instructional supports, which is something that I'm deeply passionate about, supporting teachers so that they can in turn support students. Of course, using data as our roadmap, not an indictment, but a roadmap, because it helps us plan for the future and how we move forward, whether it's dealing with systems of restorative practices or working towards MCAS or whatever our benchmark assessment is, but also thinking about what does joy look like. Yes, we're gonna do what we need to do to make sure that we're meeting our mark on MCAS, and then identifying how we can get students to continue to increase their score of the year. But how do we have fun in school? How do we have fun in a way that's responsible in school? How do we leverage student and parent leadership in our school? And those are things that I've been able to do in the past, and things that I would love to bring to the ARMS community in a very inclusive way. I'm also someone that believes that everybody, again, is a lifelong learner. No one is the end all be all. So keeping that in mind, leveraging what teachers would like to see implemented, what do families want to see implemented, and how can we encourage our students to take on different leadership positions throughout the school as well. I'm also someone that has walked the walk. Again, I still have a lot to learn, a lot of room for growth, and I know that the ARMS community won't let me fall shy of my growth. But I'm someone that has literally walked the walk when it comes to building out these types of systems, and I'd love to be a part of the ARMS community to support with the development and implementation of these systems, but also learn about the beautiful culture that I know you have already.
Well, thank you for that. Um, Trying to see here how I can move you to the back of the system, the process, so that you're not on the call as I'm speaking. But since I don't know how to do that, I'm just going to say, well, thank you so much for being here and sharing who you are with the individuals who were able to join us today. This meeting, this session is recorded, so anyone
Mhm.
can go back at a later time to watch the session and just replay it as many times as you need to hear what Ms. Jackson has stated in her comments and in her responses to the questions that are asked.
Can
Um,
I? There are a couple of questions in the chat. Do we have time?
it is 5:47,
Okay.
and let me see. Let me try. Okay, there are two. So it says,
Mhm.
can you tell us what you know or understand about the community of Amherst, and how would you bring the understanding of Amherst culture to your work at ARMS?
Yeah, so what I know about the community of Amherst is that it's a large community of activists, but also a very diverse and inclusive community. And I know that combining the inclusivity that is in the greater community into the school, again, by making sure that all voices are heard and that students feel included and safe in school, is going to be a big part of what I bring and help to enhance within ARMS. So thank you so much for that question, Miss Lopez.
And then the other one, it says, see, there's usually a moderator with these things to go over the questions, right? So it says, do you have a favorite program or process that you would bring to ARMS that would create a healing environment that is functional post pandemic and post leadership change?
Mhm. Yes, thank you so much for that question, Ms. Mayfield. And I think the system of restorative practices that I mentioned, and again, that would start with the teacher leadership team, with the administrative team, but also there are a lot of outside supports that we can bring in to support with the holistic needs of students. But I think implementing that system of restorative practices and intervention supports will be something that will be foundational to support with the healing environment within ARMS.
Okay, great. And that only took us a few extra minutes. So thank you for recognizing the questions in the chat. Like I said, there's usually someone who would come on and let me know that there are questions and, here's the
No
question.
worries.
Slide it across. But thank you again, Ms. Jackson, for joining us and taking the time to let us know who you are. And once again, for everyone who wants to, this has been recorded and you can replay it as many times as you'd like. So, Ms. Jackson, I'm going to end I'm going to remove you from this section and just put you in the back screen for a moment. I just found out how. So I'm going to remove you. All right. Thank you so
everyone.
much.
Great to be with you.
And please wait in the back so I can exit the process.
Sounds good.
Let me see. Whoops. Oh, did something wrong here. Hold on. Remove. And for everyone who has joined the call, I know that there is a session scheduled for 6 o'clock with Tanya Brodd, and Ms. Broad has taken a position elsewhere. So the 6 o'clock session has been canceled for tonight. So thank you all for showing up to hear about what Ms. Jackson has to say. And I am going to only go on the 6 o'clock session just to let anyone who is not on this session know that the 6 o'clock has been canceled. So thank you all, and the broadcast is ending now.